folks, we're going to get started. We've got a great topic today. So we're going to discuss removing friction from the customer journey. I've got a little ask from the audience. This is an interactive summit. While we're talking and having a good time up here, if you could just start to write a question. You're going to be really impressed with our panelists today, but the ask is we're going to take a little extra time towards the end, if our panelists allow, and take maybe 15 minutes to answer some questions. But I think when you look at this customer journey discussion, you're going to have questions around this. So that's the ask. We'll make it a little more interactive, a little more fun. So my name's Luke Wilwerding. I'm the Vice President of Sales for a company called ELO. We basically invented the touchscreen 50-some years ago and have been involved in millions, literally millions of interactive experiences over the years. And so this customer journey discussion is certainly near and dear to me. But when we looked at today's time-pressed consumers, they're looking at different options. They're looking at convenience. They're changing the way that they shop and interact with different brands and companies. And so our discussion today is really around removing that friction. There's definitely a COVID component here. How did COVID affect some of this interaction and preferences? And then overall, just ideas on the journey. How do we better this process? How do we amplify? What are the learnings? So I'm going to introduce each of the panelists here just real quickly, and then we have a brief presentation from each so you can understand the organizations in which they represent. So first we have Sandy McKibben. She's the Senior Director of Retail Strategy and Design at Rogers Communication. She's coming to us remotely from Canada, which again, this is the first panel I've ever done on stage with someone remote, so it's pretty cool here. And then we've got Dan Morton, VP of Guest Experiences with Hilton. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to some slides and have Sandy do more of a formal introduction here. So with that, I think, Sandy, you can see the slide?
Not yet. Yep, there we go.
Rock and roll.
Hello, everyone. I am coming to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm sorry I cannot be there today to see you all in that room. My role is spread across the retail platform at Rogers. We have 800 stores in Canada that represent 3 brands. I'm going to be talking about 2 today. And my role is determining the design of the stores in terms of introducing new designs and formats, where we put them, strategically across the country. Our digital experience within the stores. We obviously have a project management and account layer. And then the last is the creative. So if you think about traditional advertising, getting customers to the store or to the mall, our department's job is to get them over the lease line. So anything we could do at the front of the store, and then once they're in the store, that impacts the customer experience is what we do.
Sandy, would you like me to go to the next slide?
Sure.
Perfect. All right.
So lots of small words there, but essentially Rogers Communications is one of Canada's largest telecoms. We are similar to a Verizon or an AT&T. And we have the 2 brands that we're going to be focused on today, which is Rogers, which is our premium telco brand, and then Fido, which is a flanker brand. Rogers is also a partial owner in MLSE, which is Toronto Raptors. We're also a partial owner in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we're a full owner in the Toronto Blue Jays. So we do have a very large media component that plays into our overall company structure. But I am going to be focusing on the retail journeys today in Rogers and Fido.
Thank you, Sandy. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dan. Dan, I've got your slide up now.
Great. I can't see them, so I don't know what's going on there. I don't think that's my slide.
Oh, here we go.
That's my slide.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. That's not my slide. That's Sandy's slide.
There we go.
There we go. So a couple slides about Hilton, but just to introduce myself, I look after our guest-facing technologies for Hilton. So once you've decided to book with us, all of the various technologies from payments to digital check-in, digital key, in-room entertainment, IoT, things like that. You know, all of the various technologies from across all those great brands that you see on this slide right here. Most of you've probably heard of Hilton since you're sitting in one right now. 18 brands, about 6,900 properties, over 1 million rooms, 122 countries. very large loyalty program that I imagine how many people are Hilton Honors members of? Hey, good, yeah, most people, that's great, good to see. And you can see our properties across a wide spectrum of types of properties, from focused service and mid-scale properties like Hampton up to full-service properties like this, conference properties to luxury properties like the Waldorf or the Conrad. If we go to the next slide, talk a brief overview real quick. This cycle is effectively our value proposition, our business model. We have this in our investor decks pretty frequently, and gives you an idea of kind of how the business works. I bolded there in color, satisfied, loyal customers. That's where a lot of the guest experience comes in, right? In person and digital. We are a people serving people business, as our CEO will say on almost every call, right? And we always will be, but we want to at the same time bring great digital experiences to augment that and make it a better experience. Going around that real quick, it's we hopefully make guests very, very happy. That increases our market share, which makes our owners, we're a franchise business, so effectively all of our properties are owned by other people, and so we need satisfied owners, and they're satisfied when our market share grows and guests are happy, which gives us a better hotel pipeline, new hotels, better financial performance, and on and on. We reinvest that in loyal customers because they're happy again. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you, Dan and Sandy. If we can get Sandy back on the screen up here. All right, fantastic. So I got a couple questions for you guys, and I really appreciate your overview, certainly experts in the field. The big one's a little meaty though. So when we look at COVID and the impact that it played in terms of friction and customer experience, I imagine for a period of time that was it was difficult to get your arms around what you're gonna do and how you're gonna manage it. But when you look at your strategy back at that time frame, what was going through your heads and how did you adapt? Sandy, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I mean, we all lost traffic regardless of our business. So part of it was with the traffic that was in the stores, what could we do to change the way we do things? And I'm sure like many of you, we were ramping up the customer experience up until that point. Everything was touch and feel. The rep experience was very close to the customer. So physical distance was something that we actually leveraged. Our stores are designed around the idea, they're called CASA, our Rogers stores, around the concept of home. And so the main transactions took place around what we envision as a kitchen table. And we didn't have POS. So we have, mobile POS. So we were in front of the customer. So we had to, I'm sure as everyone had to do, pivot very quickly to physical distancing. It meant that people couldn't touch a large part of our accessories, which, is quite a bit of our business. So that had to be mapped off. So those are, the challenges that we had at the time. We can talk later about obviously what we did, but that is what we were dealing with.
So we're opening up here. There was a lot of friction.
Oh.
So Dan, how about you?
Yeah, well, as you could pretty easily guess, COVID put a big damper on the hospitality industry in March of 2020, and suddenly occupancy dropped 90% in the industry, give or take, right? So Hilton, along with our peer companies and so on, there were a lot of furloughs, there were fewer people, just what could you afford? So there was a lot of how do we keep the lights on, how do we support our staff, how do we make sure that people that were traveling were still able to be supported. And at that time, the majority of people traveling were people who needed to travel because of COVID, right? Medical and first responders and so on. And then quickly, as you get a little bit further along and people were maybe willing to travel some people needed to for other reasons, then it became about how do we make it easier and better for our staff? How do we meet our guests where they are? And if they want to be able to go straight to their room, have contactless arrival, how do we make sure that works really well? And then we can talk more about it, but it led into a lot of really great opportunities, as I think everyone knows kind of the situation, not just in our industry but in all industries, with how do we help in any physical venue where staffing shortages and challenges are often a problem, right?
So it'd be easy to say that during this period of time, there was a lot of design and strategy thought that went into how do we address customer preferences and needs at that point. And so, Sandy, when you look at guiding principles when designing solutions for reducing friction, how does it work? What do you think of first there?
You called it out right at the beginning. It's really time. During COVID and now as a result, people want, generally speaking, in our world, a faster experience. Whereas we were able to take advantage of dwell time in stores, we could no longer do that. So not only are we managing what the customer is looking for, we're trying to find ways to maintain sales. So we really, doubled down on what will save the customer time. And even something as simple as waiting in line. We are very much a local base feel. So we wanted people to just come to the store. So anyway, appointment booking became something we had to do very quickly. But that allowed people to set up their appointment and come in, and we could give them a specific amount of time. So that was our biggest and out of the gate change that we made.
And if you thought of sort of principles when you were going through that, are there any key call-outs that you would say that when you look at designing sort of a process within Rogers?
We want to understand friction the most. Like we really, for anyone who sits in a corporate office, we think we know what the customer is thinking and feeling. But the reality is that the bulk of that information comes from two main sources: the customer themselves and the reps that are serving. And so we do double down on surveys, which can be annoying, but we try to make them a little excited for the customers to really let them tell us what the benefit would be to anything that we need to change. But the front line is really where the information comes from. So I would recommend to anybody, if you don't have a concentrated frontline feedback loop, and I use the term frontline, but whatever your customer agents are, spend a lot of time with them. And not only did we do that, but we also made it a bit of a game. The more ideas that were voted on, so we actually set up a portal where frontline reps could give their ideas and opinions on how to change the customer experience, and we would then have other members vote. And the highest votes would then go through a panel, and they'd actually get a prize. So there was an incentive for the reps to provide the information that would work best for decision makers.
That's a really important thing there in terms of that feedback loop, and I love the idea of the incentive. So Dan, when you look at sort of the friction that was created, how did you build and design processes, and kind of where was your head at?
Yeah, so maybe I'll talk through kind of the arrival process at a hotel, right? So Hilton had launched Digital Key several years before COVID, and Digital Check-in and Digital Key, and it was largely framed as a convenience benefit for our loyalty members, for Hilton Honors members. You had to, in fact, when I started with Hilton, in order to use Digital Check-in and Digital Key, you needed to book direct with us and be an Honors member. We quickly realized during COVID that this is a benefit that everybody really wanted, right? So we needed to find a way in order to enable people, no matter what their booking journey was, wherever they booked, give them the opportunity to use Digital Check-in and Digital Key. Increase the number of hotels that not only enabled both of those tools, one to get you checked in, one to get you into your door, but bring them together in a way that enabled contactless arrival, because a lot of people really weren't comfortable being around other people, right? As being one of those people for a long time during COVID, and I imagine some of us were. The opportunity was pretty clear. So we brought that forward. We worked in very different ways, and we worked in a far more agile test and launch sort of methods than we had even before COVID, I think. And again, I wasn't with Hilton very long before COVID, so I mostly know this whole industry through the lens of COVID. But it was a really kind of fun journey, challenging, fun at the same time, and we got there. And along the way, we learned a lot of other things, and a lot of that work that we did ended up having legs beyond that. So, as wanted to enable contactless arrival, but then we realized some of our most loyal guests, well, they wanted their upgrade, so they go to the front desk because they wanted to get an upgrade, because they're a Diamond member, and that's the only way they could get it. So we launched automatic upgrades last year in order to be able to meet that need. One of the other things that we observed, one of the common challenges was sharing of a digital key. Well, it's great if you travel and you get a digital key, and like right now I'm traveling by myself and it's easy and I get my key and I go to my room, but if I'm traveling with my family, they may need keys too. Well, you didn't really make it contactless if I still had to go get a key for everybody else in the family. So adding the capabilities of sharing keys. And then it turns out as we get through COVID, a lot of those benefits and that were really around meeting the need at the time then become conveniences now, right? And people still benefit from those things. And I think we heard that from other people earlier, drive-thrus and things like that, and phone ordering and mobile ordering for restaurants. All of these things that were necessities during COVID have become conveniences that everybody's come to expect now, and I think we saw the same thing.
Well, I like what you said there, both of you, but this was a little bit of the looking back. You kind of have to look back a little bit to look forward in terms of friction. We went through a period of immense friction, and so there was definite learnings through that process. And so as you look at going forward, you mentioned a couple things here, Dan, but Sandy, for you, when you look at changing customer preferences, how do you continue to iterate to, and I know you mentioned a couple of the processes there, but are there things that you're looking at that says, wow, I'm seeing now a change in consumer preference or my customer preferences going forward where we're going to continue to have to adapt? And how do you view that, I guess, from Roger's perspective?
Well, we look at reducing customer friction, the apart from customer satisfaction, which we all want, we also look at the output of what it means to reduce customer friction. So that is brand attribution. If you're in a highly competitive market, which I assume most of you are, you want to make sure that people are staying with your brand. And we have a long-term value proposition with our customers because they have, it's a subscription-based model for the most part. So we want to ensure that the long-term value remains the same. We also want to continue to be likelihood to recommend. So I want to give you the whys of why this is so important to us. The likelihood to recommend, again, in a competitive market, and when we can leverage families and friends of families, we want to make sure that we're doing that. And the fourth most important key for us is reducing rep attrition, because again, we all know what it's like to keep our employees and the benefit of doing that. So those are our four main areas that we really want to always focus on when we're talking about friction. So, I mean, there's a number of ways we can do that. Our biggest thing is if we want to go to tactics, back-end systems, really understanding our customers. So if you don't know who your customer is, you're best to find out, and if you are in a commodity-based business where you just want to sell stuff, that's a different way of looking at it. For us, because we are, and Dan, maybe you feel the same way, we want to have people keep coming back, obviously, for what we offer. And so, what does that look like in terms of understanding how a customer wants the value that they get out of our service? So it's a value prop and an offer versus price led. So anyway, it's all of these things that are always part of the basis of how we design our systems. And boy, I'm talking way too much, but I've got a list of things that I want to cover, and I want to make sure I cover them. But anyway, I think it's really understanding the size of the prize and why we do it. That helps you design systems that make sense for the customers.
No, Sandy, that's great, because I do think the systems, we've talked a lot here at the show around systems and how they play an important part of the overall journey. But Dan, when you look at changing preferences, are there any tricks or secrets on your end that you're working to evolve, let's say, and how you address sort of the changes that you're starting to see?
Well, so many things come down in part, not entirely, but data is actually a big piece of this, right? We know what our guests are doing at the macro level. We know if they're booking. We can see if they're using the benefits and offers that we have, the parts of the experience we offer. We can see where they get stuck. Especially the digital experiences, right? We can see, somebody, do they use digital key when the bookings are for one person but not for two people? Well, maybe you need key share in order to be able to enable that, right? Or maybe one of the gaps, and one of the major friction reducers for us over the last couple of years, probably for a lot of people, has been people actually get QR codes now, right? And that's actually been really important. Being able to put a QR code out and go, hey, this is an easy way to get the app and get you onboarded, right? Putting a QR code in the room to get you the hotel information, the thing that used to be in a big paper book that nobody wanted to touch over the last 2 years because of COVID, right? We pulled those out of most hotels and then started to add QR codes back. But watching, you know, and understanding what people are doing, you know, test things in a few properties. Does it work? Does it not work? What can we expand? What can we extend? Et cetera, right? That's really test and learn is you know, the flexibility to do that and I guess the right to do that and test something and go, hey, you know, that didn't work, right? Let's not do that next time. Let's do something else. Those are, I don't think they're secret, but
right.
they're important and critical to finding ways to reduce friction. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that. I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you. So, and this is maybe a plug for my company, ELO, but when you look at technology in a hotel or in a wireless retail store, how do you envision technology reducing that friction and the different ways that it might adapt, let's say, to changing consumer preferences? Sandy, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, we used to, actually, I QR codes though rule. I totally agree with you. If I could have a t-shirt. Yeah, digital signage for us pre-COVID was pretty much what you think it would be, is delivering offers and value props throughout the store and telling a story. And that's what we use them for. It was an easy way for us to switch on a dime and you know, offer a new product or service. But going into COVID, we started to look at, and we do use ELO screens, so we do use screens from this company, really understanding because if we look at consumers, we're used to touch. We are all used to our phones. We are used to engaging in so many different ways, and we've been trained, you know, and the younger generations obviously do it more than the older ones. But so anyway, we wanted to leverage this idea of touch. So coming out of COVID, we're bringing this back. And then how can our digital tell a story and bring the customer in closer to the net goal that they want, which is a service and saving time. So we launched a touchscreen table for our Apple products. And it was so that people could pick a plan, they could pick the model that they wanted, and we worked with Apple actually to provide content to us. So the customer was able to, on their own time, at their own pace and their own comfort level, find out more information about that phone than having a rep tell them. Or because they couldn't go over and touch the actual demos because we had to block them off, they were able to touch and feel in a different way. So that was a really cool learning for us.
And are you starting to see the use of mobile, maybe kiosks for payment? Are there a lot of different areas where you're continuing to enhance those experiences?
Oh, yeah, I mean, all day long. Like we had to, and actually I'd be interested to hear from you guys what you think about this, but the idea of touching, as much as everyone wants to do it, also became dirty and scary for a bit as well. So it was trying to balance that behavior that everyone was used to with a reaction against it. So we made bill payments. You know, the cash became, obviously we weren't going to take cash, so we modernized our bill payment system to be with kiosks and digital price cards. So we historically would put out price cards for products, and then we brought in digital price cards, which now automatically uploads a price and a change in an offer and a sale. And we actually have seen, not only are the customers happy because they can, obviously, it sounds dumb to think that you wouldn't have a price card, but there was a time where we actually didn't, and it was so problematic for the reps to continuing to update the price cards. Anyway, what we found with the digital price cards is not only were the customers happy, but the reps actually found a 10 to 15% reduction in time that they needed to spend to sell through a program.
Wow.
So that increased the rep productivity while making the customer happy. So when those two things happen together, it's magic. Happy rep, happy customer, happy company.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. So Dan, how do you manage technology and then continue to keep these beautiful environments that people enjoy so much?
So much of it's the right the right technology for the right context, right? We're not putting technologies out there just to put technologies out there. We're trying to meet people where they are and solve the need they have, right? So I have seen some digital displays around here in this property, and in a conference property, wayfinding is a really great use, right, for digital display. Payments in markets are often a really great opportunity, similar to what Sandy was saying a minute ago, using displays for payment to simplify and reduce friction at payments, especially when there may not always be a staff person there right when you need one, right? At the same time, for us, we're often driving people back into our mobile app, right? Because a lot of activities and a lot of information and a lot of things are really best served in the palm of your hand, right? There's no, if you want to know when breakfast is, it might be just as well to have it on your mobile phone than have to walk over and, click through somewhere else, right? So if we can get you there, and this is where things like QR codes become really interesting, because we can seamlessly connect back and forth from one place to the next. We have in several of our properties right now, in room, we have our connected room platform, which is in hundreds of our properties right now and expanding. And we have QR codes that bring you effectively what was that book that used to sit on the desk now onto your mobile phone. So you scan the QR code and now you can just keep that, in a tab right there with you the whole time, and you can find out the gym hours, the pool hours, what time breakfast is, or whatever else you need to know that way. And you were able to find out to get that easily just by looking at your TV screen, because it just rotated through and it was right there, right? So bringing people the information, and you don't necessarily want that information to drill in on your TV all of the time. It's actually easier to bring you over to another platform. So thinking about it in a cross-platform way and leveraging the tools that we have to do that is, I think, going to be important, and different types of properties are going to have different expectations.
Are you seeing a need for the idea that you drive up, and how do you address that customer from that friction point? Because it could be a unique experience where you drive up, you're addressed through mobile, or you're identified as a customer, the check-in process already begins. But do you see that as a friction point or opportunity, or how does Hilton look at it?
You're talking about customers who just show up at the hotel?
Well, yeah.
So I think a big part of that is supporting our staff, right? We are, as I said earlier, we're in the business of people serving people,
sure,
right? So we want to enable and empower the staff at the properties to be able to understand the tools that we offer, understand how to empower their guests to get what they want and get what they need as much as possible, answer all their questions, but also don't make them feel like they always have to call downstairs if they actually just have a simple question that could be answered through another means. So we try to encourage and engage our staff and try to operationally set them up for success so that they can understand and help guests use those digital tools. And at the same time, we try to bring those tools to the guests before they even arrive. So we're working it kind of from both sides there.
Which is interesting, and I appreciate what you've just said, but both of you mentioned it's also about the employee. And certainly it's about the customer. But when we look at friction points in terms of customer journey, how has the impact of labor shortages affected both of you, and some of the things that you're doing both from a technology process to help ensure that friction is reduced, knowing there are current labor shortages? But Sandy, I'll direct that one at you first.
Yeah, couple thoughts. The idea that someone can check in, actually Dan's reminded me of this stat that we found. So when customers, there's a high amount of, we found there was a high amount of anxiety from customers who were waiting to get served. They knew they were going to get served, but they wanted to know for sure that they were going to get served and who they were going to get served by. So by checking in, by giving this appointment booking tool, which you could be doing online or you can actually do it in the store, and they knew that they were going to see, they were assigned a rep who they were going to see, and an approximate amount of time that rep was going to be able to serve them, reduce their anxiety significantly and actually increase sales. Because it wasn't that they, like, you know what I mean? It's like standing in line to order a coffee. It's not like it's anxious to order coffee, but you want that coffee and you want to know you're going to get that coffee. It was the same principle. So that was really effective. And then not only did it increase our sales, but it actually already made the customer more engaged because they know John's going to serve them. And in some stores, we actually had John's picture. So they know exactly who's going to serve them and approximately when John is going to serve them. So they already felt like they knew John. And so if you can imagine a customer walking up, but we have all of their data because they're cell phone plans. So we know the customer. John is able to start to interact with the customer. It just made a better experience and was much happier for the rep. And then when we look at the tools to increase the productivity, was a great way around the labor shortage is that we're able to use technology to better manage our scheduling of our reps. We were better able to understand how many reps were going to come in through the door, how many customers were going to come in through the door at a certain time. And we started to manage our traffic differently. Because up until then, you'd have a staff of 5 people. They would be waiting around all day to manage all the customers that came in the store. So we got better at knowing when people were going to be coming in on our high and low periods. Those are the big ones.
But it sounded like you streamlined then the overall process. Was it streamlined prior, or did you start to see the impacts of shortages to where you're like, we've got to do something different here?
We had to do something different. Yeah, because we didn't want to, the staff were going to be furloughed, and we tried everything we could to avoid that. But the reality was that we couldn't afford to pay for them anymore. So we just got better at staffing and making it a better experience for the rep.
It's great to see you found some lift as well.
I can't believe I'm going to bring up QR codes again, but the other great thing about QR codes was that we were, again, to Dan's point, we would try things to see if people would engage. And the great thing about QR codes is you can manage all of that. You can understand how it's being used and who's loading them and who's using them so simply and easily. So if you're not using them, it's the one takeaway.
I don't know the answer to this question, but are you also looking at sort of the reverse QR code where someone might present their own phone with a QR code to identify them? Is that anything that's on the horizon?
We cannot do that in Canada.
Okay.
It's a privacy issue right now, so.
I learned something new. I guess that's what's about.
Like express, we'll get to express pickup, I'm sure, when we're talking about this, but our express pickup process, we would love to send a QR code to tell someone that their product is ready to pick up and just, come and show us your QR code and you can leave. But in Canada, we're incredibly restricted. They still have to show their ID. There's still a process there, so we're limited that way.
Gotcha. All right, Dan.
Yeah, so so many of the memorable interactions people have at hotels are actually with staff, with people, that recommendation you got, or, that, extra bottle of wine they put in your room, or whatever the case is in your journey. And when staff is short, when time is limited, it's much harder for the staff to be able to deliver those kinds of magical experiences that come up, right? So a big part of what we're trying to do with technology is to enable them to be able to have those deeper and more meaningful conversations and interactions with guests by simplifying some of the transactional stuff, right? The stuff that we can deliver as well or more quickly or more seamlessly through digital means. And we're trying to leverage technology in order to be able to communicate and help set expectations for things, right? Because different things have changed. Different hotels and different retailers in general. The terms of service have slightly changed here and there, depending where you go, and we need to communicate that clearly so guests can understand. But all of that is really geared towards making a better experience for the guests, setting their expectations, making it more seamless for them, reducing the friction for them when they engage our tools, and then empowering our staff to be able to engage at a deeper level with each of the guests that still chooses to engage, and many do, right?
And I'll ask the same question I did Sandy, but have you seen a considerable amount of evolution, let's say, over the last couple of years, or has it been sort of a status quo?
Gosh, maybe not surprisingly, contactless arrival has more than doubled in adoption rate over the last couple of years. And what's interesting and consistent with what we've heard from other people over the last day is it's held. I mean, people are still, and it's still growing. People really are finding that a benefit, right? To be able to, if you land at 11:30 at night at the airport, you're going to get to your hotel at 12:30. You just want to go to bed, check in, get your key while you're in the Uber or Lyft over, and then just go to your room and go to bed, wake up the next morning, and you can reach out and talk to the staff about any questions you have and other things. But simplifying some of those, that's held really well, right? The opportunities over the last couple of years that we've seen in seamless payment experiences, better in-room experiences. Gosh, I don't know how many. I'm just curious. How many people in the room, maybe already during their stay, but expect that before they leave, they're gonna watch TV? Do most people in their hotel room? Do most people expect? Actually, it's a minority actually in this room. It turns out the vast majority of hotel guests watch TV when they stay at hotels. Their expectations are changing. They want to also be able to stream. They want to be able to watch their Netflix on the TV. And sure, you can watch it on your phone, but it's actually a different experience to put your phone down and just sit there and not have to hold something while you're watching TV, right? That's kind of convenient. So we're increasingly bringing streaming capabilities to hotel rooms and things like that. And people's expectations for that are growing. Just look at the numbers of streaming customers over the growth in that over the last couple of years. No, we're not at a point where linear TV is going away anytime soon, but all of that is stuff that people expect, right? And we want to make sure that we're delivering all of it.
I like that. It's basically, and I'm the same. I want to bring my preferences from home to my hotel stay, and that being maybe my Netflix account or my Prime account or whatever that might be. So, well, let me shift gears. There's a lot of different types of businesses in the room, and I'm sure they're all thinking friction in the customer journey. How should an organization be set up internally to deal with that type of friction? And I think some organizations were siloed, some might have specific teams that look at it, but I guess from maybe a best practices or how your organizations might look at just the overall organization. Do you have specific people that are dedicated to the journey, or are they really silos today and people come together to try to work through it? But Sandy, I'll start with you.
If they don't, they should. Right? I mean, the output to a satisfied customer, we all know it's not rocket science, but like I said, from a corporate standpoint, I think people can think that they know what's happening, but an invested customer experience committee, department, team, whatever you want to call it, I think is tantamount to success.
And so it sounds like Rogers has made an investment in that journey, and they continue to look at it, update it, and evaluate.
Yeah, and like I'll be honest, over time, there's been ebbs and flows. It's a customer. We all have budgets. We all have to fight for money, and sometimes there's leadership changes that are more or less impressed with how much money is spent to making sure the customer is happy. But I can say that this company ensures, and we have made many changes. We used to be the only player. We were the first player in Canada for this kind of thing, and now competition is such that we have to keep on top of it. Otherwise, it's true that the brand attribution in many industries is now not like it used to be. We used to be able to know that we could leverage a long-term value and be reasonably assured that we could keep that customer, but that's changing. COVID has totally changed it. So yeah.
Yeah, it used to be siloed to a point where in retail or certain areas you'd have e-com and you'd have your in-store and people weren't talking to. I think most of us are through that. But Dan, when you look at your organization and evaluating friction and customer experience, I imagine there's a pretty good group of people dedicated to that.
Yeah, I feel fortunate to work somewhere where, I mean, we talk about our customer promise on a daily basis everywhere in the company. That's really critical to what we believe we need to be thinking about in order to drive success. And then when you look at the journey, we do. I mean, we have teams focused on each part of the customer journey, and we have teams looking at those intersection points across, and teams looking across the whole thing to make sure it's consistent. And we try very hard to make sure that we're understanding our user, our customer, our our shopper, our guest, everyone in that journey, understand them, understand what their needs are. We, you know, as you'd expect, we do a lot of both qualitative and quantitative research, right? We do a lot of data analytics to understand not only what do we observe people doing, what do people tell us they do, what do people actually do that we can see, right, in the data. And we try to understand all of that, we try to look at it together, and then we have people laser focused on each piece of that, and then look across. And it's not just the consumer from the outside, as we talked about earlier, it's also our team members, right? Happy team members are going to make happier guests, right? So we want to make sure that we're also delivering the right technologies and right tools and keeping friction low enough for our team members so that they're not frustrated with the systems and tools and that they can easily do the things that they want to do, and then they can leverage that to delight guests as well. So yeah, I mean, we're organized largely by customer journey.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, both your environments are about that experience, but it's interesting to see just the dedication to it and the resources. So we've got a couple more minutes, so I'm going to ask one last question. Hopefully this will be a little more fun here, but when you look at going into the future, thinking of a customer interaction process or technology, is there anything that you're thinking about on the horizon to address customer friction? Just a forward-looking, whether it's your environment or somewhere else that you think is cool and interesting. Sandy or Dan?
There's two things that we're looking at. The first is consistency, and it is paramount to, I think, addressing customer friction, that the experience that every customer has is consistent regards to the channel in the organization. So if you are a multi-channeled company, we've got retail, we have field sales, digital. We want to make sure that the consistency is the same. And so we are investing in that. And I know it sounds crazy, but different channels have different thoughts around what makes their customers happy. And I have found in the past, organizations can get tripped up if they don't fully understand the channel. So for example, marketing insights may show that the customer segment is this, whatever this happens to be. But then when you go to the next click of whether the customer reacts that same way in a retail environment versus how they do it online, that sometimes can get lost. So I think the most important thing is ensuring a consistent customer experience regardless of the channel. And that is what we are looking to do. It can be in large organizations easy to lose sight of that. So that is something that we talk about all the time. And then the secondary bit is making sure that the brand is the same. And even though I just said there's a lack of brand attribution happening, I think that it's really important to, if you had a customer who used to be with you, you want to remind them there was a reason why they started with you and to bring them back and to leverage that long-term value. So it can be down to, in a retail environment, the uniforms that the reps wear. Not only is that a consistent view to the customer, but the rep also can get excited. And I will say that I didn't go into this thinking how important the employee experience was to customer friction, but the more I've been talking about it, the more listening to Dan, I'm convinced more than ever that's the most important thing. So I would say the consistency of the experience, consistency of the brand.
I jump right off of that, right? I think the seamless interaction between the different technology platforms, seamless interaction between the technology platforms and the operations and the people side of the business. There's a huge opportunity there, right? I mean, we all have different systems in whatever business we're in, and making sure that those systems all work together in ways that everybody understands all of the time. There's an opportunity there that makes it much simpler for guests and customers at the end of the day, right? With whatever, it says 1539 left. I can't even really touch on all the things that I'm excited about, right? There's a whole lot more that we can be doing and that we're looking to do, but in the room with our welcome and on property experience, and I mentioned it earlier. I think how to make payments a more seamless experience everywhere on property is also going to be a really interesting opportunity for us.
Appreciate that, Dan and Sandy. So we kind of went through a little bit of our own journey here. We kind of looked back and we talked a bit about COVID and the frictions that were created there, a little present day in terms of how we're adapting and customer preferences, and then a little bit tomorrow about, I guess there's quite a few things that people are looking at, whether it be connecting all the channels to a consistent experience or just the overall customer experience. But I'm eager to turn it over to you because I know there's got to be a ton of questions in terms of systems and platforms and all these great things that that you're thinking through. So,
this question's for Dan, but either one of you could answer it. What are some strategies for employee or frontline trainings that have worked in regards to teaching them how to empower guests or customers to use the digital tools? I come from a very large enterprise, and so on-site employee frontline training is always a huge topic, and it's something I've been really focused on lately. So if you could speak to that.
I don't know that there's a silver bullet there. I think there's always going to be a mix of different solutions, and we, you know, when we launch any new technology or capability, you know, the first point before we even launch it, we typically tested and trained at a few different properties to see, all right, does it work? How does it work? Do they understand it? Is it easy enough for them to be able to use and deploy? And we try usually slightly different things at the handful of places that we're doing our proofs of concept, right? In order to try to learn from that. And then we also try to learn what questions people have. And by the time we get to the, hey, now this is live and we announce it, we typically have pretty complete FAQs. We have, you know, videos typically describing and showing the flow. We have, you know, language that we recommend for how to, you know, talk to your customers about it and things like that. Now, again, with a large staff, with people all over, you know, that can work sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't always catch on, right? So then there is some level of manual steps, and you know, for some properties may have people visit and, you know, try new types of training and so on. But we'll also try to reach out to, and we will reach out to, say, the general manager at every property, right? With a separate communication and say, hey, you know, we want to make sure that you have what you need. What else do you need? How can we support you? And we'll learn through that. And then from there, it's time. You know, we don't expect everyone to know everything at 7,000 properties around the world on the first day or the first week or even the first month. It does take time, but it's a mix of manual and digital tools, and we're always working on new training and then trying to find those other touch points where people are being trained for other things, or where there's new employee training or whatever the case may be, where we can, you know, inject just a little piece of something that then they can get more information somewhere else from. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jean-Pierre, and Sandy, we launched Rogers Can't Tell with Gary Wood and Stan Cabela, and we were also involved in the bloody partnership with AT&T and saw that and went through that hell, and I was lucky to work directly with Ted Rogers and had some very positive and some very stressful moments with working with him. The question is to both you and Dan, and it's really about that friction points are really a reflection of the changing demands of customers, right? I mean, the reality is 5 years ago, using your mobile device to check in wouldn't have been conceivable or expected because we weren't attached to our mobile device like we are now. So when you look now 5 years out to both of you, and you look at what you think are going to be the future friction points that you're going to have to deal with, that you need to start planning now. Thank you.
Sandy?
Hi, Jean-Pierre. You know, this is a great question because we do look, I don't know if I'm going to answer this well, but when you are a premium brand, ideally, pre-COVID, we could be reasonably assured that the customer who we had appreciates the value prop and will pay for the premium experience. And so If we continue to think that way, I think we would be wrong in doing so, because we cannot deny the increased costs of life in general. You know, as we all know, like going to the grocery store is the most horrific thing in the world right now. Whereas, you know, we used to be able to just like grocery bills were grocery bills, but now they just seem to be this much more expensive, et cetera. So I don't think we can deny that price is going to be a big factor in a premium brand. So we are going to have to address that and look at, is the value prop still worth the money that people want to pay? So I think that's the first thing I would go to in trying to anticipate a reduction in customer friction, and or try to understand our customers so much so that we can really get into their own space and be a curated experience for them. So that will take more investment and more understanding into the data. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's something that we definitely have to consider as a premium brand.
Yeah, I think getting, I touched on a little of this earlier, but reducing the friction between the technology tools and the operations, I think is going to be something that we always are going to have to keep an eye on. And also reducing the friction between the, call it the back end, the app, the cloud, et cetera, technology tools, and the physical infrastructure, right? So I've been working in the realm of IoT for over 20 years, right? And connecting physical things to digital things doesn't always work the way you want it to, right? I think we all know that. But people's expectations, consumer expectations, are very, very, very high and increasing rapidly, right? Both in terms of what they expect to be able to do and in terms of how they expect that to perform. And just a observation I've made and even seen borne out through research is, balancing friction and say number of steps to do something with the efficacy and deterministic nature of the result is something that's always in sort of careful arbitration, right? Because I've seen this firsthand where, let's say you can get someone to what they want in 5 steps, and in those 5 steps, it'll work 99% of the time. Okay, 5 steps, 99%. You could go, well, what if I could reduce that to 1? That would be less friction, right? But if I can reduce it to 1, but it only works 80% of the time, I'm actually creating a bigger problem, right? So don't only focus on friction. You have to focus on performance as well. It actually has to balance, and while expectations continue to go up, I want 1 step. I want you to read my mind, tell me what I want, and deliver it to me all in 1 step. We're not there, right? So figuring that out and balancing that with the data you have, with the tools you have, with the infrastructure you have at any given point in time, and then working your way over years to that 1 step is better than jumping ahead and not performing, right?
I also look at it as people are getting a taste of conveniences. And you said it here, and Sandy, you mentioned as well in terms of a premium brand, but they're starting to understand more and more what they want. And as people accelerate that, you're going to have to figure out where you're going to compete, because there will be new entrants depending on the business that could be game changers for some, because they squarely address some of the new customer preferences. So on a 5-year horizon, it will be interesting.
People, jumping there, people's expectations are different too, depending on the context. When people are doing stuff at home with they're setting up something at home, they're far more tolerant to time than when they're, staying at a hotel for a night or 2 or going through your drive-through. They expect it to be quick, and they may not mind another couple extra steps, but it really better work the first time. Yeah. Nobody wants to deal with that mess otherwise, right?
Hi guys, thank you for sharing your experience with us. So I'm calling from Jollibee. We are a fast casual chain of restaurants. I'm just curious, what metrics do you actually measure to say that you're doing a good job in terms of creating a frictionless customer experience?
The industry, if we look at a likelihood to, hi, by the way, if we look at an industry metric of likelihood to recommend, so The assumption being that the customer is happy enough to tell their family member or their friend about the business. The industry metric is about 80%.
Yeah, so
80% of your customers will recommend you. It's a high bar, actually. Like there's some, and that might be a good thing for you to test, not you, everybody, and just understanding how important that is.
Yeah, similarly, we survey our guests, and many of you will probably get a survey email after this conference, right? And please offer your feedback, right? So that's one of the metrics that we use, and we're able to look at that across each of our brands and across each hotel and see how they're performing and look at the trend lines as well. We're also looking, as I said, we're looking at data where we have it. So in a particular journey, we'll look at attrition through the journey. Did people just stop? Did they decide not to finish the journey? Did they try to finish it and it failed, right? And what were the failure modes that happened? And we look at each of those along the way, and I get big dashboards in my email every day that have all of this stuff. Some of it every day, some of it every week, some of it monthly, depending on the level of data that we need or the kind of reporting. But we're always looking at what's actually happening, right? And that's also, that's a fantastic early warning system as well. When you see something, go bad all of a sudden, then maybe there's a problem to fix.
I just have a follow-up
Sure.
question. Do you have a catchment rate for the surveys that you expect to receive? Like you send out surveys, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Ballpoint figure for catchment rate of surveys from customers?
I don't actually know that number on the top of my head. That's just not something that I know. But like any of those, an email survey is going to get a pretty low percentage of responses. But at the scale that we're at, we get a statistically significant enough number that it works. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right, more questions? Oh, good. I appreciate the interactions. This gets to the heart of what you're after. So,
Hi, my name is Jackie, and I oversee the loyalty program for my company, Koya. We're a protein shake. So, Dan, I'm really interested in the Hilton loyalty program. So, as you grow at all these new tech advancements, how are you adding personalized experiences and relationships to those programs?
Oh, sure, yeah. There's a lot to come there. Some I can talk about, some I can't necessarily. But understanding our guests and being able to deliver the right experience, and even what the benefits are, what the core benefits for everyone in the Hilton Honors program are, is informed on a regular basis by what our guests are telling us, right? Whether how much do they value points or the bottles of water or, the free breakfast, or, we've switched to for our diamond guests, we now give them an F&B credit per day, which a lot of people value because not everyone eats breakfast, but they might want to go to the bar and buy a drink at night, right? Or maybe they want lunch instead, and being able to give that flexibility and learning from our guests and finding the right way to deliver on that service is something that we're constantly iterating and doing. But then once we've engaged you in our digital journey, we have the opportunity to do so much more because we can see what you're doing, where you're going, we can present those offers in meaningful ways. We can see what kinds of properties you like to visit and present you, offers that make sense for you as well, right? So we're always looking to do that and make that better. And there's a whole lot to come in personalization that I don't have enough NDAs for the room. Yeah.
I think we got time for one more.
I have a comment if nobody has another question. I just want to give a shout out actually to a Hilton employee. I had lunch at the bar yesterday and Zach served me and he was wonderful. And I know that we spoke about QR codes here. And I complimented him and he handed me a QR code and he said, if you like the service, please leave a comment. And so I did. And it took me right to TripAdvisor and I gave my review. So that was the first time that ever happened to me. It was it was nice and certainly well deserved. So I just wanted to share that with you. So.
Hey, I mean, I don't know if any of the Hilton staff's in the room right now, but let's just give them a quick applause
second that.
Yeah, because they've been really great here.
I wish I knew his last name, but I remembered it, Zach. I mean, it was memorable. So
That's great.
Well, we're at time, so I want to give a big shout out to both Dan and Sandy for being great participants in this. Certainly the idea of friction in the journey is a meaty topic. Everyone has their individual journeys and stories, so hopefully we'll continue to discuss through the course of the remainder of the week. So thank you guys.